My sister Mallory thought poisoning me with shellfish would be hilarious. She knew about my severe allergy but slipped shrimp paste into my birthday cake anyway. I spent 3 days in intensive care fighting for my life, while she posted laughing emojis on social media about her harmless prank. The doctor said another 10 minutes without treatment would have killed me. But here is what Mallory does not know yet. I documented everything, hired a lawyer, and I am about to serve her with a lawsuit that will destroy her perfect little influencer life forever. Where are you watching from tonight? If you have ever dealt with toxic family members who cross dangerous lines, hit that like button because this story is going to show you exactly how I got my revenge. Make sure to subscribe because what happens next will shock you. My sister thought she could laugh off nearly killing me, but I turned her joke into the most expensive mistake of her life. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. My name is Dakota, and I am 28 years old. I work as a medical researcher in Seattle, which means I understand exactly how dangerous allergic reactions can be. My sister Mallory is 3 years younger and has built herself a lifestyle influencer brand with 200,000 followers on Instagram. She presents this perfect image of family love and sisterly bonds to her audience, but behind the cameras, she has always resented me. The trouble started brewing months before my birthday. Mallory had been struggling with her engagement numbers dropping, and she was losing brand sponsorships left and right. Meanwhile, my research team had just published a breakthrough study on autoimmune disorders that got featured in several major medical journals. Every family gathering became an opportunity for Mallory to make passive-aggressive comments about how I was the boring academic, while she was the creative entrepreneur. But I never imagined her jealousy would turn deadly. My birthday fell on a Saturday in October. Mallory insisted on hosting the party at her apartment, claiming she wanted to showcase her baking skills for her social media content. She had been posting about this elaborate cake she was making for weeks, building up excitement among her followers about the surprise ingredient that would make it unforgettable. I should have been suspicious when she kept asking me to remind her about my shellfish allergy. "Just shrimp, right?" she would ask during our planning calls. "Not lobster or crab." I thought she was being considerate, making sure she did not accidentally contaminate anything. How naive I was. The party started normally enough. About 15 people showed up, mostly Mallory's influencer friends, who spent more time photographing their outfits than actually socializing. I felt out of place among all the ring lights and selfie sticks, but I tried to be supportive. This was supposed to be my celebration after all. When Mallory brought out the cake, she made a huge production of it. 3 tiers covered in elaborate fondant work with sparklers on top. She had her boyfriend filming while she gave this whole speech about how much she loved me and how this cake represented all the layers of our relationship. Her followers were eating it up in the comments as she live-streamed the whole thing. "Make a wish, sis," she chirped, holding the camera close to my face. "And make sure it is a good one because this cake is absolutely packed with surprises." The first bite tasted amazing, rich chocolate with some kind of savory undertone that I could not quite identify. I complimented Mallory on the unique flavor combination, and she got this strange smile on her face. "Oh, that is my secret ingredient," she said, winking at the camera. "Asian fusion, you know, very trendy right now." Within 10 minutes, I felt the familiar tingling in my throat that meant danger. My lips started swelling, and my breathing became labored. I immediately grabbed my EpiPen from my purse, but before I could use it, my vision started tunneling. "Mallory," I wheezed, "what did you put in this cake?" She was still filming, and I will never forget the expression on her face. Not concern, not panic, but this sick excitement, like she was watching a particularly entertaining reality show. "Oh my God, you guys," she said to her phone. "Dakota is having such a dramatic reaction to my surprise ingredient. This is going viral for sure." I collapsed before I could inject the epinephrine. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was hearing Mallory laugh and say, "She is so extra. It was just a tiny bit of shrimp paste for flavor." When I woke up 3 days later in the ICU, the first thing I saw was my parents crying beside my bed. They explained that one of the party guests, thankfully someone with medical training, had called 911 and administered my EpiPen when they realized I was going into anaphylactic shock. The paramedics had to use 3 doses of epinephrine and intubate me in the ambulance. "Where is Mallory?" I asked. My mom's face tightened. "She said she was too traumatized by seeing you collapse to visit the hospital. She has been posting on Instagram about how scary allergic reactions are and how people should be more careful about their health." That was when I knew this was not an accident. Mallory had deliberately tried to hurt me, and now she was using my near-death experience for content. While I was fighting for my life, she was gaining followers by playing the concerned sister who had witnessed a medical emergency. I asked the nurse for my phone and immediately started screenshotting everything. Mallory's Instagram stories from the party, her posts about the surprise ingredient, her live stream where she called my allergic reaction dramatic, all of it. I also requested copies of all my medical records from the hospital stay, including the detailed notes about how the doctors had found shellfish proteins in my system. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. One of Mallory's influencer friends, apparently feeling guilty about what she had witnessed, sent me a private message with a video she had taken during the cake preparation. In it, you could clearly see Mallory stirring something into the cake batter while saying, "This is going to be so funny." Dakota thinks she is so smart with all her medical knowledge, but she never pays attention to what she is eating. The video showed her holding a jar of premium Asian shrimp paste, the kind that costs $30 and had to be special ordered online. This was not some accidental cross-contamination. This was premeditated attempted murder disguised as a sibling prank. As I lay in that hospital bed recovering from 3 days of intensive medical intervention, I made a decision. Mallory wanted to play dangerous games and profit from the results. Fine. But she was about to learn that some games have consequences she never saw coming. I called my lawyer before I called my parents to tell them I was awake. The legal consultation changed everything. My attorney, Rebecca Martinez, specialized in personal injury and criminal law, and when I showed her all the evidence I had collected, her eyes went wide. "Dakota, this is not just a civil matter," she said, leaning back in her chair. "What your sister did constitutes assault with a deadly weapon in Washington state. The fact that she documented it on social media actually works in our favor. It shows premeditation and a disturbing lack of remorse." She explained my options. I could pursue criminal charges, which would be handled by the district attorney's office, or I could file a civil lawsuit for damages, or both. The civil route would let me recover the medical expenses, lost wages, and pain and suffering. The criminal route could put Mallory in prison. "How much are we talking about for the medical bills?" Rebecca asked. I pulled out the stack of paperwork the hospital had given me. $237,000. That includes the emergency room, 3 days in intensive care, all the specialists who consulted on my case, and the follow-up appointments I will need for the next year to monitor for complications. Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. "And your insurance?" "Covers about 60% after my deductible. I am looking at almost $100,000 out of pocket for my sister's joke." That was when Rebecca smiled. Not a nice smile, but the kind of expression a shark makes right before it attacks. "Here is what we are going to do. We file both criminal and civil simultaneously. But first, we need to preserve all the evidence and build an ironclad case." Over the next week, Rebecca's team worked like a forensic unit. They subpoenaed Mallory's social media accounts, including deleted posts and private messages. They interviewed everyone who attended the party. They got statements from the paramedics, the emergency room doctors, and the ICU nursing staff about the severity of my condition. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the aftermath of the poisoning. My digestive system was wrecked from the trauma my body had endured. I could barely eat without nausea, and I had developed anxiety around food that made every meal a psychological battle. I had to take medical leave from my research position, which meant falling behind on a project I had been working on for 2 years. But the worst part was watching Mallory's social media presence explode. She had gained 50,000 new followers since my accident, and brands were reaching out to sponsor posts about allergy awareness and emergency preparedness. She was literally profiting from nearly killing me, and her comment sections were full of people praising her for being so brave and educational about allergic reactions. She posted a tearful video about how traumatic it was to watch her sister collapse, how it made her realize how precious and fragile life is. She never once mentioned that she had caused the reaction. Instead, she spun it as a cautionary tale about being careful with food allergies and always carrying emergency medication. The video got over 1 million views. That was when Rebecca called me with an update that made my blood run cold. "Dakota, we found something in Mallory's private messages that changes the entire scope of this case," she said. "Can you come in today?" At her office, Rebecca pulled up screenshots that made my stomach drop. Messages between Mallory and her boyfriend from 2 weeks before my birthday. "Mallory, I am so sick of everyone acting like Dakota is some genius. She gets all this attention for her stupid research while I actually create content that people want to see." Boyfriend: "Babe, you have way more followers than she has journal publications." Mallory: "But my parents never shut up about how proud they are of her work. Meanwhile, they act like my career is just playing dress-up on the internet." Boyfriend: "So what are you going to do about it?" Mallory: "I have an idea for her birthday that will put things in perspective. She thinks she is so smart about medical stuff. Let us see how smart she really is." The messages continued showing Mallory researching my specific allergy triggers, looking up how much shellfish protein it would take to cause a severe reaction, and even Googling, "Can anaphylactic shock kill someone?" and "How long does it take to die from allergic reaction?" "She was not trying to prank you, Dakota," Rebecca said quietly. "She was trying to hurt you badly enough to overshadow your professional success. The social media boost was just a bonus." I felt sick reading those messages, but also something else, cold, calculating anger. This was not sibling rivalry gone wrong. This was attempted murder motivated by pure jealousy, and Mallory had documented her malicious intent in writing. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we destroy her," Rebecca said simply. "But we do it legally, methodically, and completely. By the time we are finished, she will lose her influencer platform, her sponsorship deals, her boyfriend who was complicit in this conspiracy, and quite possibly her freedom." Rebecca outlined the strategy. First, we would file a criminal complaint with evidence of premeditation. Second, we would hit her with a civil lawsuit for the full amount of damages, not just medical bills, but punitive damages for the intentional nature of the attack. Third, we would send cease and desist letters to every brand sponsoring her content, informing them that they were profiting from attempted murder. "But here is the beautiful part," Rebecca continued. "All of this is going to become public record. Her followers are going to find out that their relatable lifestyle queen is actually someone who tried to kill her own sister for Instagram clout." I thought about all those comments on Mallory's posts, calling her brave and inspiring. Her followers had no idea they were supporting someone who had literally poisoned me and then filmed my collapse for content. "There is one more thing," Rebecca added. "I want to recommend a specific approach to the civil damages. Instead of just asking for a lump sum, we structure the lawsuit to include ongoing payments that mirror what she would pay a medical professional for the level of care you required." She pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. 3 days of intensive care, multiple specialists, life-saving interventions. If we break this down to an hourly rate, based on what surgeons and emergency physicians charge, plus the ongoing psychological treatment you will need, the total was staggering. Far more than Mallory could ever afford, which meant we could garnish her social media income, seize her assets, and essentially make her entire influencer career work for me instead of her. "She wanted to play doctor with your life," Rebecca said with that shark smile again. "So we bill her like one." The first domino fell when the criminal charges were filed. I was not prepared for how quickly everything would spiral once the legal system got involved. Detective Sarah Kim from the Seattle Police Department called me on a Thursday morning. "Miss Dakota, we have reviewed your case file and the evidence provided by your attorney. We are moving forward with charges of assault in the first degree and reckless endangerment. We will be arresting your sister this afternoon." My hands shook as I hung up the phone. Part of me had hoped it would not come to this, that somehow Mallory would realize the severity of what she had done and make things right. but she had doubled down on her victim narrative, posting increasingly elaborate content about her trauma from witnessing my allergic reaction. I called my parents to warn them about the arrest, but my mother's response shocked me. "Dakota, honey, are you sure you want to take this so far?" she asked. "Mallory made a mistake, but she is still your sister. This could ruin her entire future." "Mom, she tried to kill me," I said flatly, "and she is making money off of it. But surely she did not mean—" She researched exactly how much shellfish it would take to trigger a severe reaction. She Googled whether anaphylactic shock could kill someone. This is all in her search history and text messages. The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably. "Your father and I just think maybe family therapy would be more appropriate than involving the police," my mother finally said. That was when I realized my parents were going to choose Mallory's side. Despite the evidence, despite the fact that I had nearly died, they were more concerned about protecting their younger daughter's reputation than seeking justice for what had happened to me. "I am not dropping the charges, Mom," I told her. "Mallory made her choice when she put shrimp paste in my cake. Now she gets to live with the consequences." The arrest happened at Mallory's apartment while she was filming a sponsored content video for a meal kit delivery service. The irony was not lost on me. She was literally making money by talking about food while getting arrested for poisoning someone. Her boyfriend live-streamed the whole thing before the police made him stop recording. The footage went viral within hours, but not in the way Mallory was used to. Instead of adoring comments about her lifestyle content, people were sharing news articles about the charges against her with shocked reactions. Rebecca called me that evening with an update. "The DA's office is taking this very seriously. They are classifying it as domestic violence with aggravating factors due to the premeditation and the use of social media to profit from the crime." But the real turning point came when other people started reaching out to me with their own stories about Mallory. The first message came from Emma, a girl who had been Mallory's college roommate. "I saw the news about your sister's arrest," she wrote. "I need to tell you something that happened junior year that I never reported." Emma's story was chilling. During finals week, she had been competing with Mallory for a prestigious internship at a fashion magazine. The night before Emma's final interview, Mallory had slipped laxatives into her coffee, causing her to spend the entire next day sick in the bathroom. Emma missed the interview and lost the internship to Mallory. "I always suspected it was her, but I could never prove it," Emma wrote. "When I confronted her, she just laughed and said I should have been more careful about what I ate. Seeing what she did to you, I realized this has been a pattern for years." More stories followed. A high school friend whose car mysteriously got vandalized the night before prom after she started dating someone Mallory liked. A former coworker whose presentation files got corrupted right before a big client meeting after she received a promotion Mallory had wanted. A neighbor whose garden prize-winning roses died overnight from bleach poisoning after she won a local home beautification contest that Mallory had entered. Each story painted a picture of someone who had been systematically sabotaging other people's success for years, but had been careful enough to maintain plausible deniability. Until now. Rebecca was ecstatic when I forwarded her these testimonies. "This establishes a clear pattern of malicious behavior," she said. "The prosecution can use these to show that what happened to you was not an isolated incident, but part of a long-standing pattern of using harmful substances to sabotage people she perceives as threats." Meanwhile, the social media fallout was devastating for Mallory. Her follower count started dropping precipitously as news outlets picked up the story. Major brands began pulling their sponsorship deals and demanding refunds for recent campaigns. Her talent management agency dropped her entirely. The lifestyle influencer community, which thrives on authenticity and relatability, turned on her completely. Other creators started making videos about the importance of mental health resources and family therapy, clearly distancing themselves from Mallory's actions without directly naming her. But Mallory's response to all of this made everything worse. Instead of showing remorse or taking accountability, she doubled down with a series of increasingly unhinged social media posts, claiming she was being persecuted and canceled for a harmless prank that got blown out of proportion. "My sister is trying to destroy my life over an honest mistake. She posted on her Instagram story, tears streaming down her face. "I would never intentionally hurt anyone. This is just a misunderstanding that got out of hand because of her lawyers filling her head with lies." She posted screenshots of my medical bills with the caption, "Look how much money Dakota is trying to get out of me. This is not about justice, this is about greed." That post was what finally turned our parents against her. Publicly sharing someone's private medical information is not just morally reprehensible, it is also illegal under HIPAA regulations. My father called me the next morning, his voice shaky with what sounded like tears. "Dakota, I owe you an enormous apology. Your mother and I watched Mallory's latest posts, and we finally understand that this was not an accident or a prank gone wrong. We are horrified by what she did, and we are even more horrified that we initially tried to protect her." "I'm just glad you see the truth now, Dad," I said. "We want to testify on your behalf in both the criminal and civil cases," he continued. "Mallory needs professional help, but first, she needs to face the consequences of her actions. What she did was attempted murder, and the fact that she is still trying to profit from it and manipulate the narrative shows that she has no remorse whatsoever." That afternoon, I received a call that changed the entire trajectory of the case. It was from Jennifer Walsh, an investigative journalist from a major news network who had been following the story. "Dakota, I would like to propose something," she said. "I want to do a comprehensive investigation into your sister's pattern of behavior, including interviews with all the people who have come forward with their own stories. This is not just about what happened to you. This is about a serial predator who has been using social media to normalize and profit from harming others." I thought about all the messages I had received from Mallory's victims over the past weeks. People who had suffered in silence for years because they thought no one would believe them, or because they thought Mallory's actions were just bad luck or coincidence. "What would you need from me?" I asked. "Full access to the legal documents, permission to interview your family and the other victims, and your willingness to go on camera to tell your story in your own words." I looked at my reflection in my phone screen, still pale and thin from the medical trauma I had endured, but with a steely determination in my eyes that had not been there before. "Let us do this," I said. "It is time the world knew exactly who Mallory really is." The interview was scheduled for the following week, right before Mallory's preliminary hearing. But I had no idea that the story was about to take an even darker turn that would expose secrets I never could have imagined. The investigative report aired on a Tuesday night, and within hours my phone was ringing nonstop. But it was not just supporters calling. It was the FBI. Agent Michael Torres introduced himself calmly, but his next words made my blood run cold. "Miss Dakota, we need to speak with you immediately about your sister's online activities. What you uncovered about her poisoning you has led us to discover something much larger." The meeting took place at the federal building downtown. Rebecca accompanied me, and we sat across from Agent Torres and his partner, Agent Lisa Chen, in a sterile conference room that smelled like industrial coffee and fear. "Over the past 48 hours, we have been analyzing your sister's digital footprint based on the evidence your attorney provided," Agent Torres began. "What we found goes far beyond assault charges." He opened a laptop and turned it toward us. The screen showed a complex web diagram with Mallory's social media accounts at the center, connected to dozens of other profiles and financial transactions. "Your sister has been running an elaborate fraud scheme through her influencer platform," Agent Chen explained. "She has been selling fake dietary supplements to her followers, claiming they cure everything from allergies to autoimmune disorders. The supplements contain nothing but cornstarch and food coloring, but she has made over $800,000 in the past 2 years. My stomach dropped. She has been scamming people with fake medical products. It gets worse, Agent Torres continued. We found evidence that she has been deliberately targeting people with serious health conditions. She joins online support groups for various illnesses, builds relationships with vulnerable individuals, then privately messages them about her miracle supplements that supposedly cured her own health problems. And they showed me screenshots of conversations where Mallory posed as someone with severe allergies, claiming her supplements had eliminated her reactions completely. She used fake before and after photos and fabricated testimonials to convince desperate people to spend their life savings on her worthless products. One victim, a mother in Ohio, with a diabetic child, spent $12,000 on supplements Mallory claimed would cure type 1 diabetes, Agent Chen said quietly. The child ended up in diabetic ketoacidosis because the mother reduced his insulin based on Mallory's advice. I felt nauseated. The sister who had poisoned me for social media content had also been systematically exploiting sick people for money, giving them false hope while potentially killing them with dangerous medical advice. But here is where it connects to your case, Agent Torres said. We believe Mallory poisoned you specifically to create content for her fake allergy supplement marketing. She was planning to launch a new product line called Allergy Shield and needed dramatic footage of allergic reactions to make her cure claims seem more credible. Rebecca leaned forward sharply. You are saying she nearly killed Dakota to create marketing material for fake medicine. That appears to be the case. We found draft social media posts on her computer scheduled to go live after your birthday, talking about how witnessing your reaction inspired her to develop revolutionary allergy treatments. The scope of Mallory's criminal enterprise was staggering. She had been operating under multiple fake business names, using shell companies to hide the money, and employing a network of fake accounts to create artificial social proof for her products. She had even been planning to expand internationally, targeting vulnerable communities in developing countries where regulation was less strict. We have been building this case for months, Agent Torres explained. But we needed someone on the inside to help us understand her methods. Your willingness to cooperate and provide evidence has given us everything we need to shut down her entire operation. The federal charges were filed the next morning: wire fraud, mail fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, unlawful distribution of unapproved medical devices, and multiple counts of practicing medicine without a license. Combined with the state assault charges, Mallory was looking at potential decades in federal prison. But the most devastating blow came when the victims started speaking out publicly. The investigative report had included a hotline for people who thought they might have been scammed by Mallory, and within 24 hours, over 300 people had called in. The stories were heartbreaking. Elderly cancer patients who had spent their retirement savings on supplements that promised to shrink tumors. Parents of autistic children who believed Mallory's claims about neurological reset formulas. People with chronic pain who had stopped taking legitimate medication because Mallory convinced them her herbs were more effective. Several victims had died after following Mallory's medical advice, including a woman with lupus who stopped taking her immunosuppressive medication and died from organ failure 3 months later. I watched the news coverage from my apartment feeling a mixture of vindication and horror. This woman who had shared Christmas mornings with me, who had been my maid of honor at my college graduation ceremony, who I had trusted enough to eat cake from her hands. She was a predator who had been systematically destroying lives for money. The financial investigation revealed that Mallory had been living far beyond her apparent influencer income. The luxury apartment, the designer clothes, the expensive vacations she constantly posted about, all of it was funded by stealing from sick and desperate people. But the most chilling discovery came when agents searched her apartment. Hidden in a bedroom closet, they found what could only be described as a trophy collection, printed photos of her victims at their sickest moments, medical records she had somehow obtained illegally, and detailed notes about which emotional manipulation tactics worked best on different types of vulnerable people. She kept souvenirs, Agent Chen told me during a follow-up meeting. This was not just about money for her. She enjoyed watching people suffer based on her lies. The evidence also revealed that Mallory's boyfriend had been fully complicit in the scheme handling the financial aspects while she managed the social media manipulation. He was arrested on the same day as the federal charges were filed, caught trying to flee the country with over $200,000 in cash. When Mallory was finally arrested on the federal charges, there was no boyfriend live streaming this time. She was taken into custody at a courthouse hearing for the assault charges, led away in handcuffs while news cameras captured every moment. The judge denied bail, citing her as a flight risk and a danger to public safety. For the first time since my birthday, Mallory would not be going home to create content about her latest drama. She would be sitting in a federal detention center, facing the reality that her house of lies had finally collapsed completely. I felt a strange sense of closure watching her perp walk on the evening news. The sister who had tried to kill me for Instagram followers was finally being held accountable, not just for what she did to me, but for years of systematically destroying other people's lives. But even as justice was finally being served, I knew the hardest part was still ahead, rebuilding my own life from the wreckage she had left behind. The ripple effects of Mallory's arrest spread faster and farther than anyone could have anticipated. Within a week of the federal charges being filed, her entire digital empire crumbled like a house of cards built on quicksand. Social media platforms began shutting down, not just her main accounts, but an entire network of fake profiles she had used to manipulate her supplement sales. Instagram alone removed 47 accounts connected to her fraud scheme, while Facebook deleted dozens more. Her YouTube channel, which had generated hundreds of thousands in ad revenue, was permanently demonetized and removed. But the platform bans were just the beginning. The Federal Trade Commission launched a sweeping investigation into the entire wellness influencer industry, using Mallory's case as a catalyst to examine how social media personalities were marketing unregulated health products to vulnerable audiences. The victims started organizing, led by Patricia Williams. The mother from Ohio, whose diabetic son had nearly died, they formed a class action lawsuit seeking damages not just from Mallory, but from the platforms that had allowed her to operate unchecked for years. Their attorney estimated the total damages at over $15 million. These platforms profited from every post where my sister spread dangerous medical misinformation. I told reporters outside the courthouse. They took their percentage of the ad revenue while people were literally dying from following her advice. Meanwhile, the criminal cases were moving forward with devastating efficiency. Rebecca had been coordinating with both the state prosecutors and the federal attorneys, ensuring that all charges would stick and that Mallory would face maximum consequences for her crimes. The state assault case went to trial first. Sitting in that courtroom watching the prosecutor present evidence of how Mallory had researched my allergy triggers and deliberately poisoned me felt surreal. The jury looked horrified as they viewed her text messages, planning the attack, and her social media posts celebrating my collapse. Her defense attorney tried to argue that it was a prank gone wrong, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges: assault in the first degree, reckless endangerment, and criminal harassment. Judge Patricia Hernandez did not mince words during sentencing. "Miss Mallory, what you did to your sister was not a prank or a mistake. It was premeditated, attempted murder, motivated by jealousy and greed. You then compounded your crime by exploiting your victim's suffering for financial gain and social media attention." Bad. She sentenced Mallory to 8 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for the first 4 years. But that was only the beginning. The federal charges carried much harsher potential sentences. The financial reckoning was equally brutal. The civil lawsuit I had filed was proceeding simultaneously with the criminal cases, and Rebecca had structured it brilliantly. Instead of just seeking damages for my medical expenses, she had crafted a comprehensive claim that treated Mallory's attack as a form of medical malpractice. "Since your sister decided to play doctor with your life," Rebecca explained, "we are billing her at the same rate as the medical professionals who had to save you from her experiment." The calculation was staggering. Emergency room physician rates, intensive care, specialist fees, nursing care costs, pharmaceutical expenses, and ongoing psychological treatment, all calculated at premium medical professional rates rather than standard hospital billing. The total came to over $2 million in damages. But Mallory no longer had any assets to seize. Her apartment was being foreclosed on, her car had been repossessed, and every bank account connected to her fraud scheme had been frozen by federal authorities. The luxury lifestyle she had flaunted on social media had evaporated overnight. The bankruptcy filing came next. Mallory's attorney tried to discharge her debts through Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but Rebecca was ready for that move too. "Debts incurred through criminal activity cannot be discharged in bankruptcy," she told the bankruptcy court judge. "Miss Mallory deliberately poisoned my client as part of a larger scheme to defraud the public through fake medical products. These are not legitimate business debts. They are the proceeds of organized crime." The judge agreed, ruling that all damages related to Mallory's criminal activities would survive any bankruptcy proceeding. Even if she spent decades in federal prison, she would emerge still owing millions of dollars to her victims. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching her former influencer network distance themselves from her completely. The lifestyle bloggers who had collaborated with her, the brands that had sponsored her content, the talent agencies that had represented her, all of them rushed to issue statements condemning her actions and denying any knowledge of her fraud scheme. Several major influencers made videos about the importance of vetting collaboration partners and doing due diligence on sponsored products. The wellness industry began implementing new disclosure requirements and verification processes specifically because of what had been exposed in Mallory's case. My parents finally understood the full scope of what Mallory had become. The daughter they had protected and defended was not just someone who had made a terrible mistake. She was a career criminal who had been systematically exploiting vulnerable people for years. "We failed you, Dakota," my father said during one of our weekly phone calls. "We were so focused on Mallory's struggles with her career that we never saw what she was actually doing. We enabled her by making excuses for her behavior instead of holding her accountable." The family dynamic had shifted completely. Where once my parents had favored Mallory and treated my concerns about her as sibling rivalry, now they were grappling with the reality that they had raised someone capable of attempted murder and systematic fraud. The federal sentencing hearing was scheduled for 6 months after her state conviction. The prosecution was seeking the maximum penalty under federal guidelines, 25 years for the fraud charges alone, plus additional time for the medical malpractice and conspiracy charges. Agent Torres called me the week before the hearing with one final update. "Dakota, I wanted you to know that we found evidence of at least 12 other people who suffered serious medical complications or deaths that can be directly traced to following your sister's fraudulent medical advice." The scope of destruction was almost incomprehensible. What had started as jealousy over my career success had metastasized into a criminal enterprise that had claimed multiple lives and financially devastated hundreds of families. But there was one last twist that none of us saw coming, a revelation that would reshape everything I thought I knew about my family and the true motivation behind Mallory's attack on me. The final revelation came during Mallory's federal sentencing hearing delivered by our father in a victim impact statement that left the entire courtroom stunned. "Your Honor, there is something about my family that my daughters do not know," he said, his voice shaking, "something that might explain why Mallory's jealousy of Dakota became so extreme that she was willing to commit murder." Rebecca and I exchanged confused glances as my father continued. 29 years ago, my wife and I struggled with infertility. We spent years trying to conceive, going through multiple rounds of failed treatments. We were on the verge of giving up when we decided to pursue adoption through a private agency. My heart started pounding as I realized where this was heading. Dakota was adopted when she was 6 weeks old. We never told either of our daughters because we wanted them to feel like equal members of our family. But Mallory found out 3 years ago when she was going through old family documents to create a scrapbook for our anniversary. The courtroom was dead silent as the implications sank in. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Mallory's escalating resentment, her comments about me not being real family, her willingness to nearly kill someone she had grown up calling sister. Mallory confronted us about the adoption, and we begged her not to tell Dakota. We were afraid it would damage their relationship and make Dakota feel less loved or welcome in our family. But instead of keeping our secret, Mallory began using it as a weapon against her sister, though Dakota never knew why the attacks were happening. I felt like I was drowning in revelation and betrayal all at once. Not only had my sister tried to murder me, but she had done it knowing we were not biologically related, while I had spent my entire life believing she was my blood relative. The family I thought I belonged to had been built on a lie that became a murder weapon. Judge Morrison looked as shaken as I felt. "Mr. Williams, are you saying that the defendant's motive for attempting to murder your daughter was related to her adoption status?" "I believe so. Your Honor, Mallory became obsessed with the idea that Dakota was an outsider who did not deserve the love and support our family had given her. She said things like, 'She is not really our sister, and why should some random kid get everything that should be mine?' The adoption became, in Mallory's mind, justification for treating Dakota as less than human." The federal prosecutor immediately requested a recess to address this new information. During the break, Rebecca held my hand while I processed the emotional earthquake that had just restructured my entire understanding of my life. "Dakota, this does not change who you are or how much your parents love you," she said gently. "But it does give us insight into just how twisted Mallory's thinking had become." When court reconvened, Judge Morrison addressed Mallory directly before imposing sentence. "Miss Mallory, what you did was unconscionable, regardless of your victim's biological relationship to your family. But the fact that you used private family information as justification for attempted murder shows a level of callousness that demands the harshest possible consequences." She sentenced Mallory to 28 years in federal prison to be served consecutively with her state sentence. In total, Mallory would spend 36 years behind bars, meaning she would not be eligible for release until she was in her 60s. But even as justice was finally served, I struggled with the revelation about my adoption. That evening, my parents came to my apartment to have the conversation we should have had decades earlier. "We are so sorry, honey," my mother said through tears. "We thought we were protecting you by not telling you about the adoption. We never imagined that Mallory would use that information to hurt you." "I wish you had told me," I said honestly. "Not because it would have changed how I feel about you as my parents, but because I had a right to know my own story." My father nodded sadly. "We realize that now. We made decisions based on fear instead of trust, and those decisions gave Mallory a weapon she used against you. We will spend the rest of our lives trying to make up for that." The conversation was difficult, but healing. They told me about my birth mother, a college student who had chosen adoption because she wanted me to have opportunities she could not provide. They showed me letters she had written to them expressing her hope that I would grow up in a loving family that would help me reach my potential. "She would be so proud of who you have become," my mother said, showing me a photo of a young woman who had my eyes and my stubborn chin. "And she would be horrified by what Mallory tried to do to you." Over the following months, I made the decision to reach out to my birth mother through the adoption agency. Linda turned out to be a successful veterinarian in Portland who had often wondered about the baby she had placed for adoption 28 years earlier. Our first meeting was emotional but wonderful. She was everything I had hoped for in terms of warmth, intelligence, and genuine care for my well-being. "I have followed your research career online for years," she told me over coffee. "I knew it was you from the photos your parents sent through the agency when you were younger. I have been so proud watching you succeed in such important work." Building a relationship with Linda felt like reclaiming something Mallory had tried to steal from me. While my sister had used my adoption as evidence that I did not belong anywhere, Linda helped me understand that I actually belonged in multiple places, with the family who had raised me and loved me, and with the birth family that had made the difficult decision to give me opportunities for growth. The therapy helped too. Dr. Sarah Chen, my counselor, specialized in trauma recovery and family dynamics. She helped me process not just the physical assault and its aftermath, but the deeper betrayal of learning that my entire family structure was different than I had believed. "Families are not just about biology," she reminded me regularly. "They are about love, support, and commitment to each other's well-being. The people who show up for you during your worst moments, those are your real family members." And people had shown up. Rebecca continued working pro bono to ensure that all of Mallory's victims received compensation. Agent Torres checked in regularly to update me on how the federal case had led to broader reforms in social media oversight. The colleagues from my research team had rallied around me, helping me catch up on the work I had missed during my recovery. Most surprisingly, many of Mallory's former victims had reached out to offer support and friendship. We formed an informal support group that met monthly, sharing our experiences and helping each other heal from the trauma of being systematically deceived and exploited by someone we had trusted. A year after Mallory's sentencing, I was finally ready to return to my research full-time. My work on autoimmune disorders had taken on new meaning after experiencing firsthand how someone could weaponize medical knowledge to harm rather than heal. I was developing new protocols for allergy treatment that could help prevent the kind of severe reactions I had endured. I also started speaking publicly about my experience, not for social media fame like Mallory had pursued, but to help other families recognize warning signs of manipulation and fraud. My story had become a cautionary tale about how social media could be used to exploit vulnerable people, and I wanted to ensure that no one else would fall victim to similar schemes. Standing in front of audiences sharing the most painful chapter of my life, I realized something important. Mallory had tried to kill me, to steal my success and my place in our family. Instead, her actions had led me to discover my own strength, connect with my birth family, and find my voice as an advocate for others. The woman who had tried to destroy me had actually helped me become more myself than I had ever been before. That might be the sweetest justice of all. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with family members who crossed dangerous lines out of jealousy or resentment? How did you handle discovering that people you trusted were not who you thought they were? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your stories help others feel less alone in their struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics, justice, and healing. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they can survive even the deepest family betrayals and come out stronger on the other side. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the darkest chapters of my life. I hope my experience shows that even when family members try to destroy us, we can choose to build new families with people who truly care about our well-being. Remember, biology does not determine your worth, and the people who show up for you during your worst moments are your real family regardless of how you found each other.